Second. All right, live.
Excellent. Okay, got another Naiji Temple here. Introduce myself, Naiji Coach.
Oh, Nige Mitchell.
Naiji Ben.
Naiji Glenn.
And our newest member,
Naiji Neo Magus.
Excellent. All right. So what we're talking about is the pitch pipeline that we're doing in Podlaris. This is actually great content for everyone who wants to know what we're doing, what we're about these days as far as our missions. But it has particular things to do with the Nijez storyline because that's the main product we're going to be pushing immediately because those are the people that are going to be most easily available to see the benefits of our product. But we'll be getting everyone. From there, we'll probably go out and get the rest of the interpretives, and then from there into the literals. But in the very beginning, the breach, we'll make the breach with the Nijez pipeline. Okay, so I've gone with these guys in the past, so I'll just do it real quick to help it for Neo-Magus and those who are new watching. There's something called a pitch pipeline, and it's basically the initial materials you need to get across to someone bringing what you have to offer into their life. It can be used for sales. It can be used more related to us to getting a message across, to convincing someone of a certain kind of political or philosophical view. And it's also used, which relates as well, actually in RPG games, in that RPG games can have like an infinite tree of platform expansions, but there's a minimum sort of world trunk you have to have in order to start having beta play. So the pitch pipeline creates that, and the very first one to go online will be Nijez. All right, so pitch pipeline, for review, has 8 parts to it, for those who aren't familiar. Number 1 is you need to actually have targets. You need to imagine them. Hopefully, with a good speculation, we've done that already. It's going to be Nijez. Nijez in particular that are hanging out in the world that we can actually get to. That brings up the second thing. That's canvassing first the targets. Next is target location. How will you get access to them? You know, is it through internet, emails, and so on? In our case, it's going to be a direct in-person approach. And they are available walking around. Nijez just walk around. They're in coffee shops a lot. They work at coffee shops a lot. Pretty much anything indie and art, they're just out there. In fact, if it's cool and free, you'll see them milling around. So locations, we have that. Stage 3 is you need to approach them and actually enact the scenario a little bit to get an idea of how it'll go. We've done the research so far. It's going well, which is we go up, we give them a card, tell them that it's about a research project for their innate nature, that's how we read them, and then from that point, they've been cool with answering questions, even sometimes staying there for a few minutes. So, approaching Nijez on the street, telling them that you read them for a special program, they will give you a few minutes to talk to them in a lot of cases. All right, so that's good to know. That brings up stage 4, needs assessment. Now that you know what the encounter is going to be, the target, where you're going to find them, what do they want to hear? What do they want to talk about? Okay, we're still doing that right now, but we have a good idea, and for those who've heard it, we've put that ideas in that the pitch we're working on, which comes up later. But we had to find out, because originally we were going too techie. We went a different route, and we're still learning. So we're still doing surveys with them to get feedback of what they are willing to conversate on. All right, number 5, once you know what that is you give them a pitch. It should be 10 to 15 minutes at the most, modular, so you can do it small in increments and jump around random style if you need to. We've done that. I think you've heard the Nijai and Naiji field pitches. They both clock in under 12 minutes when they're done at a nice rhythm. Okay, so those, by the way, were taken from talking points that you guys said were very appealing to you about Naiji. For the Nijai, same thing. I did needs assessment on them, and we're still doing ongoing with the ones in the coffee shop. So that's actually stage 5. Stage 6 is basically stage 5. You want them to go for commitment. That's the idea of the pitch. The commitment we want is for them to download the ebook. Before they do that, they may ask a certain pantheon of questions. This is probably one of the most demanding parts. It gets more demanding as you go up. And this requires the casual incantation, formal incantation, Nijai and Naiji blowouts for voicing. Because those are the kind of 4 areas they may ask about. General questions, major set pieces, or more info on either the Nijai or Naiji. So for that stage, stage 6, we need to be able to do that. We're training on that now, making those materials. Next, stage 7 is what we want them to go do. And that's what we're working on right now is the ebook. When we talk to them in person, the whole thing one is there's an awesome free ebook all about you. Go check it out. So they may ask questions, we handle those questions, and then they go and get the ebook. When they get the ebook, they're going to have, we will blow their mind. That's the idea. Is it's going to be so well done and so accurate about them that they'll have their mind blown. And then that will push them on the artifact, as I mentioned, Act 4, into finding out more about the Nijai and then getting involved in the practitioner program. And that's it. They go from being a stranger to being in the practitioner program. That's the pipeline. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how it's going to work for any mojo we will be doing. We'd have to find out where they're at, what the best way to approach them is, what they want to hear. Without lying, we're going to tell the truth. We can find out what truths about their mojo and so on are they most eager to hear about. We want to make sure we lead with those kinds of things. Okay, so these principles I just mentioned, they apply to anyone. But the first product line is Nejez. So we'll be doing a lot with cross sort of promoting the awesomeness of the unconscious genius in one of those products to the other. So one thing I'm actually interested for us to talk about is your guys' understanding of the Nejez storyline. For example, like when you came from pre-Pod Lair, what was your understanding of your inspirational storyline? How that changed when you found out about the Nejez? What did you like about hearing that you are Nejez? What did you think about the Nijai? You know what I mean? Like, I'm actually curious in your thoughts. So I'm just kind of open a broad discussion. But this will be a main centerpiece, is at the end of the Naiji ebook and the Nijai ebook is basically then merging them into the Nejez storyline. I want to start that talk now. So we'll start with, what do you guys think about it? What do you like about it? So forth. Go ahead.
Just about like what we think about the Nejez story in general.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like for example, where were you when you before say Pod Lair? What was your understanding of, for example, inspiration? Like
well, I don't think I really necessarily had much of an understanding at all. So it was like a new thing really, because in my case, I was more into typology models, obviously, like right. A lot of us here, where that's not going to be everyone necessarily. To be honest, I really never consider myself very artsy.
Right.
So I never really used that concept of inspiration very much. But it's very interesting and I think very true. And it just learning about it in itself has completely changed my understanding of the way I work and what I'm interested in find meaningful. And then I think about the Nijai in general, I think just one of the things that's so appealing to them for Naiji, you were actually talking about this a little bit in one of the earlier hangouts where you mentioned that Nai has this pervasive sense of meaning, and what Ni has, Ni doesn't natively have that, but one thing that it does have is access.
Right.
And so I think a lot of Naiji just natively have all these outrageous, interesting ideas, but we don't necessarily think that there's another creature that's designed to be interested in that kind of thing and listening to those and hearing us talk about them. So a lot of Naiji don't. And so I think that's one of the things I personally find that's just so great about the Nejez inspirational dance, is that we have a partner that's designed to sort of bring our teaching stories, which without the Nijai, it's very difficult to do, right. But it gives us a way to do that. They do.
Definitely. I know for me, the Nijai, I mean, I've talked about like how they inspired different powers down there before, but like really, I feel so isolated without that connection.
Exactly.
And the Nige story seems really incomplete and really kind of dark sometimes.
Yeah.
Without that that other side to make it have its proper context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking in the field, now we kind of covered, we can just talk about other things. Kind of what I'm seeing in the field is that the Niges are out and about a lot. We'll definitely want to know how to approach them individually, but also as a group, because frequently they are in pairs together. They'll two Niges together, the Nige and the Nijai. But they both have been receptive to being approached. I think most, at least the ones that we're looking at, they seem rather nice and bored. That seems a magical combination. And Niges who are nice and bored have a very high openness to hearing interesting stuff from new people who seem nice.
Yeah.
I guess
Well, I also wanted to add, because I also had some thoughts about like how I thought about my other before I got into Pondler. Obviously, I didn't know that it was, my other was called the Nisha and that they are considered my other. But I always felt like isolated. That's very true. I kind of thought of myself as a world unto itself, and I didn't really think of anyone else as as a person that can kind of come into it. I kind of felt like it was just me, and it was all about me and me trying to get what it is that I needed in order to then take my game and everything further and farther. And the thought of like a partner, like a lover, it kind of, I don't know if you can tell, but like the way I'm saying it, it's kind of like a little bit odd. It's a little bit like weird. It's a little bit awkward, and I don't like to say it out very loud because I don't like.
It's almost like what most standards for that are seem like an intrusion. Like almost like what I do with that in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and especially the way that it's kind of presented by the culture that I kind of grew up in. It kind of felt like love is this kind of thing where it's not really. First of all, I just want to mention that I'm kind of shy about the entire subject matter just to begin with.
Okay.
So wanting to talk about it is kind of, no, but it's a shyness that I kind of want to get over.
That's good. But thank you for telling us.
Yeah, but so I'm kind of like sensitive, like how loud my voice is coming across. I don't want anyone like, oh, Glenn's talking about love. I don't. I don't kind of like.
Yeah, family can kind of be like that.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But it's also like, what was I saying? I was saying like the way that it's kind of like presented in the world is sort of like people have their opinions of how it's kind of meant to be. Like you'll see like a romantic movie or something, or you may watch two people kind of get along, or two people not get along very well, and that can all kind of paint your entire perspective of how you think relationships are in general and what to sort of make of it. And then you might even lose hope. Like, is there really a way for two people to sort of get along in a productive way? Like, is it really even possible? Because sometimes you might feel like you've never even really seen that. And the areas that you do see it are in these kind of like films where it's sort of like, can you really believe what it is that you're seeing at all?
Right.
And so, like, that's definitely an element. And then when I got into Pablo and I started learning about Naiji, then I started learning about Nija, and then I kind of found out about the social alchemy that they have for one another, and it's inspirational. That kind of made me like feel like, because I was not really like I never really believed in the whole idea, I guess, of like true love or something. But it kind of got me into accepting that there's actually mathematically someone out there that's designed to sort of be like the one that's meant for you in terms of like the mojo, right? Like a Naiji to like a Nija. There's a Nija out there.
I don't think there's, personally myself, I think there's maybe more than one person for each of us out there, but I think that there are the mojo and certain riffs that, yes, you'd have to say that energetically they are super bonus stack for you.
Exactly. Not that there's one. What I meant by one was that there's like a mojo that's the one for you. That
Yes.
there's actually somebody that is designed for you. And most of my family is Nijez, so I have a Naiji dad, and I have a Nijai mom, and all my sisters are Nijai, and my mom's mom is also Nijai. And so I've seen quite a few Nijai, and then I also have relatives. Um, and so I've seen these Nijai. They seem so different from one another. I never really thought of them as sort of like people that are part of that kind of storyline that I can have. But it's definitely interesting to sort of, because some Nijai are kind of like, they are like that one they are kind of like that one person, they kind of seem a bit vied up. Like some Nijai kind of vied up, and you might think like, how is this person at all? But there's all these different questions they come up, like the development, the rift that they happen to be, all these kinds of questions, they all come up, and so you kind of, if you haven't seen a Nijai that in the right kind of Nijai, it doesn't mean that all Nijai are going to be like that.
Definitely.
Or all going to be like the not adequate or not ideal. There are actually Nijai out there that you actually can get along with really well, and better than the ones that you kind of have gotten along with or have seen. Because some of them can be kind of boring. Some of them can be a bit, too high, too Z. There's all sorts of.
Someone have shy that really throws you for a tailspin.
Yeah. So there's all these different things, and it kind of messes you up. And then it's also another thing that I really want to mention is being able to learn how to mojo read is such an incredibly powerful tool, because you're not confusing people that aren't your mojo or aren't a Nijai, for example, as Nijai.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like, you're elevating your perspective and your lens on the case that is all of humanity, that has to do with like who is a Nijai and what is a Nijai like actually. And so you're constantly trying to like learn more and more about that. And,
on that, go ahead.
Yeah, just learning more about what a Nijai is and also what a Nijai isn't, and everything that implies. Basically, is what I want to say. Yeah.
No, that's great. And what you made me think there was someone I was reading today. I won't say what their mojo is. I don't even remember who they were, except that something came up, and I like what they were talking about. I think it was someone you requested, Mitchell, possibly. But it was one of those like real brainy types. And what he was saying was that when you ponder issues or problems, one thing you have to really consider is that humans have consistently shown that there's always more to learn. That we used to think it was like the continent we were on. Then we realized there was the other part of the globe. Then we realized, the solar system, then galaxy, then, multi-galaxies, and so on and so forth. So it really reminded me, what you're talking about there is that when you talk about like that one guy we said that is a bit confused about Nijai he knows, thinking it may be something else, like a Baiji, is realizing how massive of a possibility algorithm each mojo is. And so, like, when you look at the data, because like right now it's nice, we're getting up to, because I just came up with like the 2K extras, around 12K. There's about 900, they have like Nijai females in there, and about like 600 males. So that just begins to give an idea of how many variations that mojo can actually do. People have a very, like, their understanding of the Earth and the cosmos, there's a correlation to that and their understanding to like human design. They think it's just so much more simple than it is. Like the idea, for example, say like the typology models, is accounting for the fact that there are easily, just to start with, like a beginning, every mojo has a riff that misreads as every other mojo. That's just like the first level of misreads. And so the fact that, like, you think about it, there's a Nijai that is very convincing as every other mojo. They're not. But so you have to start realizing that the amount of variation that's contained in a mojo, it's really, it's I find a lot of times, and I guess
mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling, and you realize that the way to come at it, and this is kind of what Glenn was referring to, I think, is you have to expand your lens on that subject. Because then
Yeah.
You just don't, you totally look at it different. It's a whole other conversation.
Hmm.
Totally. Totally. Because I mean, like it's really complicated math. I mean, you don't even know what your other is unless you've seen like thousands of it, and you need to understand every other mojo as well in order to understand what your place is among all of these other fish in this sea, this vast ocean with all these different animals. So there's dolphins, and then there's sharks, and then there's these animals, and there's those, and like there's actually, you know, like because all the 8 powers are represented among every mojo, and so you need to understand like how it all kind of comes together, and like how certain people use their powers in this kind of way, and then there's the Nijai, and then the Nijai. I mean, that's like this huge, you know, like phenomenon in the world, and there's so many different ways. Yeah, and there's so many different ways it can come out and it can show itself. There's males, there's females, there's homosexuals, there's these kinds of people, there's those kinds of people. There's the Nijai that's part of this kind of, comes from this part of the world, and then there's the Nijai that comes from this other part of the world. And there's, I mean, like there's so many different kinds of levels and nuance, and you know, it makes it really interesting. And they're all Nijai, and that's like, like you know, it's like overwhelming. It's like whoa.
No, it's not. It's also, but also I think for whatever individual, say Nijai, that you may find more particularly interesting, all the Nijai that you know of makes your relationship with any single Nijai so much better because they're within that context. It makes them richer. It does.
Yeah, I think you said something about that too, Coach. You said like the Naiji, we kind of like we're not a part of any single bubble, but we're masters of every bubble in a way. You said something like that. Like I remember, and that's kind of like exactly how it is. You may not necessarily like I might learn something about a Nijai that I know very more immediately by learning something about some other Nijai somewhere else.
Absolutely.
And so I mean, like I can apply that knowledge here to this more immediate situation. So I mean, like you could take lessons everywhere and learn everything that you can from anything.
And just in general, learning about them in general helps you learn how to use your powers right. Because this is a question that's come up quite a bit recently. I'll probably have to blog about it at some point, which is the inspirational levels, or the actual, particularly the subject of intimate partner levels.
Yeah.
I get a lot of questions about the doubling up of double towers, double hunters, double gatherers, because that happens a lot. And the math is kind of like the subject of the pod layer patch for different religions. You can fix the math of those things. I mean, it's a lot of workaround, but energetically, there are certain things that are just stronger. And you can fill your life with stuff that would be of your other, like your work or your art or hobbies, things like this. But if your intimate partner is not that mojo, you mean like that? It kind of like, as far as like a simulator in the world, like your intimate partner is like your best simulator conduit in the world. And to not have that be your other, that's tricky to deal with. I'm not saying it's not doable, but I think that if you had to start from like scratch, it would be something you have to consider. Do you know what I mean? Because
when you say like, no, go on, please.
No, but yeah, that's basically it. It's just sort of that you can love anyone and you can have positive relations with anyone, but if you get mathematical with it, there is just the fact that you have certain engines and they require certain interaction in order to reach certain levels of development and maneuvers and so on. So you could do that. I mean, it is possible, Nexi says, to do that through non-humans. But you then have to do the fact that your most constant interaction is with a person who does it different. And the reason I mention that is I know that for myself, being a hunter and my family are pretty much all hunters, is you get a skewed idea of how to score yourself. And it really was, Nexi helped me so much that I want to convey that with the Najez storyline, is that Naiji who don't have that to work with, they tend to get some really unusual or like unhealthy ideas of how they score themselves. And it doesn't tend to actually really make them happy in the end. It's weird. They keep
No, I
doing
agree
it,
with that. I
but
totally
they don't get happy.
I see. I see exactly.
Which is weird because the niche guy seems like they're like, no, that can't be it. But when you actually try, you're like, holy shit, this niche guy is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, like, if you're in a relationship with someone that isn't a Nijai, but you're kind of interacting with them, unless you know what their mojo is, you're not really gonna. But if you're kind of expecting them in sort of like an intimate kind of way, like that, it makes it difficult because you really need to know what it's like to be with a Nijai in terms of not just like interacting with them like through the internet or something, or just like maybe a phone call. You need to actually have them present with you in your day-to-day life in order to understand like how the dynamic happens in this kind of a medium. You can understand them in other ways, but unless you know how to deal with the Nijai one-to-one, it really makes it so that you don't really understand what a Nijai is completely. You know what I mean? Like, and if you're thinking about Nijai in like the internet world, and then in real life you don't have any real Nijai, you might actually start to get weird ideas. Yeah, that's a great point that you made, Coach. Because I mean, if a Niji hangs around with a mojo that isn't Nijai, they're definitely going to start getting the wrong impression of what it means to score well.
Yep.
Like a Niji that's getting involved with a Vizai, for example, like Bruce Lee with his wife Linda Lee Cadwell. His entire perspective, he's kind of like expecting to sort of like some like Niji, like the Niji, they kind of they push the Niji in specific ways to help them grow in certain ways. And if a Niji like Bruce Lee is looking at Linda Lee Cadwell, who's a Vizai, and he's looking at her as sort of like, okay, what kind of reaction? How does she feel about this? And she's kind of like pushing him, but she's pushing him to want to become more like a Vizai. Then that's actually hurting him and making him, like into something that he's not. And then that'll lead into like him developing a lot of bad math in his own psyche about like what it means to be the mojo that he is. He'll start thinking about like, this is what it means to be a good Naiji is actually to be like this, but that's actually not the truth. And when he does that, it's not going to lead into him growing the way he wants to grow.
Absolutely, and going on sort of like that energetic reward system that teaches you how to be a hero, there's a scale to that. And besides the incremental and correct degrees that you were referencing, there's also like just the ultimate, like taking it to its ultimate level. And it's going along what you're saying. Besides the fact there's individual maneuvers, there's also a height of maneuvers that you just cannot achieve unless you're with your other. So the one I'll coin right now, and I think Naiji might know what I'm talking about, is you've probably been there when you're in your sounding off state sometimes. You are a rock god. You are, you're a superhero. And that's not possible for any other mojo to give you that feeling other than a Nijai. In the game that you're a Nijez storyline game. Just like any RPG game, you need to complete that proper whole quest to get the game to go, ta-da! You did it! You have won the game! You got it right. And that's why Naiji can break lots of records and have like certain success that way, but they feel like, I'm not, you know what I mean? They don't feel like, I feel good, like I've lived life that I feel like I really enjoy what it has to offer. That's because your reward is the Nijai. You've never been rewarded. I mean, there's just, no matter how much you may like another mojo, there's just something about having that other half of you look at you with awe. Because basically, every mojo that's not a Nijai for an IG is going to be doing one of these following two things. Either they don't really give a shit. That's just, energetically, they just don't care as much, and they can't. Their energy pathways just aren't as interesting. Or they'll be competing with you. So they do think that being Ni Alpha is awesome. That's because they're Ni Alpha, and then they're competing with you for who's Ni Alpha. So, I mean, have that like.
I'm Ni Alpha.
Yeah, because basically only the Nijai can actually say this to you. That they are the chosen one of their Nijai story. And that you are the chosen one of their other half. Just like a Naiji is the only Mojo that can say, I'm the chosen one of being Naiji, Zai, and V. And you Nijai, you are the chosen one by natural law to complete me. So that's about to say like a penultimate experience. That's definitely up there, and you really can't experience that except through that. But now you can do that through art and through work. But you have to say it, that natural law made humans these ultimate works of art. It's hard to compete with that. Although Nijez are a good example because we do tend to do a lot with the muses and things like that, and getting off on scientific discovery and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's just something about it. I know that, like, for example, going to coffee shops, just the fact that that there are those 4 Nijai baristas and they're friendly, it makes me feel immediately like the adventure I'm on. All they have to do is they show curiosity when we show up. And the fact that they are curious each time we come in of like, what are they going to do this time? It makes it a thing. And I'm telling you, I don't believe there's any other power except for Ni fluttering around your Nai activity to make you feel like you're interesting. Even other Nai Alpha can't do it like that, although you can by hunting on it. But yes, technically Naiji and Nijai can both do it, but only Nijai can do it without actually making any sort of competitiveness come up. Because they're super interested because the other half of their story, but they don't have the same goals you do. So it's really quite heady. I definitely know, like, my confidence goes up a lot, my mental clarity. Yeah. And on that too, like the whole thing of, like, say prison mentality, starvation mentality versus people being more altruistic when they're feeling better, they're better fed, so forth, feeling safer. There's a sense of contentment that can only come from a good connection with your other, and you should do it through everything. Where you live, the work you do, everything about you should connect there. But having in physical human form, that's got to be on the top as far as bonus stacking that connection.
I totally understand, Coach. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there.
Before you,
yeah.
Go ahead have your thoughts. We should head off in a few minutes, and I'll make sure that the other guys say something as well before we head off. But please, this has been a great conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, like, there have been really, like, some special moments that I've had with Nijai in person, and it's usually been when I was kind of down on myself, and then I kind of, the Nijai, they kind of help to sort of recover the good and recover, like, the situation and make me feel not so bad anymore, and kind of, like, change the situation up in a way that made me kind of forget about the bad. And then, like, I just, got up and moved on. And I was like, and I really thought to myself at those times, like, if I was really going to be able to sort of find my way back to sort of thinking about myself in a better kind of way, I thought that this is going to stay up for a while, but like a lingering kind of, like a smelly thing in the air. But it's kind of like it just evaporated all of a sudden, and then it just, like, you just start marching away and you start going back to doing everything fine. It's
Definitely
amazing.
Very good.
Yeah.
Point. Yeah.
Mitchell.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with what Glenn's saying there. Like, I think sometimes when you're away from that energy and you don't have a good connection, like you get
caught up in the wrong kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Like you get sort of, like, stuck, like, in these kind of
I agree.
mucky mindsets. Like, Nai has this thing, like, with its dissatisfaction, and this does come up, like Naiji, like the whole life is pain kind of theme. And when you don't have the Nijai, and it's really very common. When you don't have that other connection, it can really seem like your consciousness can't really go past that way of thinking. I mean, I guess there's sort of metacognition way where you can think, okay, well, it's there, but you're not really feeling it.
Right.
You have that connection. And then when you do feel it, it just, like, makes all of that just go away. It's like it doesn't even matter. You're just sort of floating above it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, you really feel like you're stuck.
Yeah.
You really feel like, how am I ever going to get out of this? But then it's sort of like the knee. It's like knee has a kind of way to reboot the Nye and make it kind of like come back to the surface in a buoyant kind of way.
Like Coach even mentioned Jai too. Like Jai gets stuck in this sort of depressive thing, and there's almost like this panic of like I'm not going to be able to get out of this.
Out again.
He helps to do that. He has that with Nye, and I'm sure the objective powers have that in their own way with the subjective powers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Ben? Ben?
Oh yeah, I mean, it just sometimes it gets to a point where it feels like like this is too heavy, whatever case you're working on, things like that, and it can feel like how am I ever going to be able to beat this or challenge this, or whatever, or solve this, so you need to be able to make that connection, so you feel lifted again, and you can go on new avenues.
Definitely. Neomegas, any thoughts on that?
Well, on this general topic, I think going back to originally what this is about, prior to getting into Podlair, I had a vague concept of social alchemy, but I didn't know there was any math to it at all, really. This was long before I even got into any typology or anything like that. I knew innately there are certain people I could be in a room with, and I feel like it's boosting my RAM, or basically making become energetically alive. Whereas other people I'm in the room with, I can say the funniest thing to them, and it's just like dead, like nothing going on, like tough, like just tough crowd sort of thing going on, and I just know I'm not vibing with these people, and I feel like these other people who are energetically good for me, I barely have to expend any effort, and I feel like I just the right things just come right out of my mouth, basically, without really having to really think too deeply. So I had that basic concept, but again, I didn't know there was any kind of system to it. I just maybe thought it was sort of random. Some people have good chemistry, and some people don't. And then eventually, I stumbled into typology through something else completely different, and the typology didn't really stimulate my understanding of that dynamic. It just got me into the idea of certain people are innately different in some sorts of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when I got into Podlair, learned what the hell I was, which was I can't begin to describe the relief of learning that. And the fact there's something called another out there, and something kind of just clicked in my mind, and like, yes, there's been people I've been around where I'm just like, holy shit. Something I couldn't really describe before. And then when I first was sort of transitioning into Podlair, there was a girl I started dating, and of course I had her read as a Nijai. She still thinks she's a Nijai. And if she was watching this right now, she'd probably give me a earload of crap tomorrow. But anyways, I got to experience firsthand after a fresh read. This was like a summer relationship. It was long distance, so there were some practical barriers with it, being any kind of longevity to it. But I had like several months of just experiencing this whole thing firsthand. So I guess it really, through direct, fresh experience, put the whole dynamic into perspective. And I hate to say I was like making observations during the whole relationship, like trying to line it up with powers and stuff like that. But I got the general idea of how.
You're not G.
Yeah. I mean, it was almost kind of a.
That's how we show we love you. We basically tried to profile you.
Almost kind of a voyeuristic thing going on, while in the same room with this person and try to like observe them while relating to them in an amorous way at the same time.
Yeah. You are the muse.
But I learned that,
Go ahead.
holy shit, I do have feelings too. I used to be I spent a lot of years of my youth being very dismissive towards the concept of romance, like, oh, love is for suckers. All this like kind of hardened bullshit, basically. Romanticism is it's just chemicals in the brain and just all this.
Right.
Just irrationality, man.
Yeah. This wasn't the first girl that sparked this sort of realization that there is another out there. for me, there was a girl I had dated this was a couple summers ago. Um, she was very troubled, but she was also, I want to say, she almost had some savant-like abilities. And she triggered something in me like I'd never experienced before. She was able just to just instantly read all these things about me, and it was kind of like, it didn't really even freak me out. I was kind of awed by it. Unfortunately, that couldn't last. She was in a very bad spot in her life at the time, and I was kind of in a, I'd say, partied up, sort of, not quite douchebag, but sort of,
Gotcha.
a little bit kind of cocky and dismissive of things I perhaps should not have been very dismissive of. So, anyways, yeah. So when I had this relationship after the fresh read, that older one, that older relationship sort of came back and refreshed, and things started like puzzle pieces sort of fitting together, and it kind of clicked in my mind. I'm like, yeah, okay, this shit does work.
Definitely, I think it's something. This is good. I'm really glad you brought that up, Neo Vegas, because I want to continue this Najez discussion, and I'd like to kind of figure out like a thread we can keep following. And I think one of them is that this for every mojo, particularly for the Najez, is there's so many extreme things that happen with each of them, the Nijai and the Naiji, and their dance together is this strange mixture of verbal play and emotional stuff and getting cold and getting hot and you know what I mean? There's a reason why we show up so much in the arts. It's a dazzling array that our dance does. It's beautiful once you know how it works, but at first it can be quite confusing and frightening. But I think once you like you're saying, once you can see more of the working pieces, you're like, oh, it does have a way to it, and it's really beautiful. The Najez dance does so many really neat things. One thing before we sign off is something that you triggered also, Neo Vegas, about the voyeurism, is actually that both Najez are gifted at drinking in. I imagine actually in their way the Vajez are also, but here we're talking about Najez, which is the ability to drink in like a person or an emotional experience in an extreme way, but different. For the Naiji, we kind of just watch all the time. And Nijai, they kind of need that kind of watching, as all gatherers do. That's why their other is a hunter. They need someone who energetically, you may have noticed, it doesn't really take us a lot of energy to become voyeuristic to pretty much everyone in our life. So, we're able to hold a voyeuristic interest in things for a super long period of time, which allows us to mention to the Nijai what different things they're doing, how it has meaning in the overall tapestry of their life. We basically just naturally are voyeuristic about the tapestries of people's lives, and we can point it out. And that really makes them feel like, whoa, I am seen, I am understood, and that's really good advice. In reverse, the Nijai, one thing that makes people think they're subjective. I'm constantly amazed. You've seen them where sometimes, like interviews, they can just drink in another person so steady. And it's almost like it unnerves a lot of people sometimes how much they'll just stare at them, but then you realize Naiji are meant to monologue. There's actually a mojo that actually when you monologue, there's like slurp, 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 and they basically drink in for long periods of time and then go on long question asking sessions. So they'll drink, 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 and then question, 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 question. And Naiji were designed to do that. Monologue, and then answer follow-up questions based off that. So it's really interesting. So both of us have an ability to watch for a long time. Naiji kind of watched the whole terrain and explain it to the Nijai what's going on in our life terrain. And the Nijai can kind of listen to what the world's giving, in this case, say a Naiji monologuing, and then explain to the Naiji what they're actually doing. You may notice a lot of times when you monologue, do you ever have this where your other comes to you after you'll sound off and kind of vibe you the meaning and the lift that comes from what you just said? When you have a physical one, you may experience it, those you've been in relationship with a Nijai, that when you say stuff to them and then they kind of drink it in and then they'll kind of say back what they understood of what you said, that feeling of being understood, it's whoa, it's really, really, really energizing and validating.
Yeah.
But they feel in reverse when they do things which seems random to them. and then you say, you know, when you did this last week, and then you did this thing over here, and Sally with this, that means you're being this kind of like sacred healer, and you're doing this and this, and you're really heroic and has this meaning and story. And you're like, whoa, wow. And so they realize that their story is really cool, but they don't naturally constellate like that. So, I don't know, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. One more thing, don't ever lie to them.
No.
They can tell. They just read your face and.
Oh, for sure.
Now you're full of shit.
And if they can't read you at the moment, they'll find out eventually. Because one of the joyous things about them is they're designed to bounce around things that you do and say at hyper quantum speed, which is awesome. Thing is, if you've lied or there's any cracks in your ship, they will find it. When you start trying to drive your ship, they'll get happy and start trying to jump around, but then they'll find out where you fibbed to them. So yeah, it's better just to skip that. And then if you do mess up, hopefully you don't fib to them, but if you do mess up and like there's a flaw or something and they see there's a flaw, just be happy they showed you so they realize that them pointing it out is good and that you're quick to update. So you appreciate it being pointed out and you're quick to fix it. Fibbing, that's hard to fix. That's a big no-no for them. This actually kind of goes to the shape-shifting thing, like the code of conduct, the moral dilemma. Is Nijai, they're okay with you shape-shifting in different forms, but they want to know why you did that, and they want to be along for it. They want to feel like they're like with the magician. If they feel like they're getting fooled, then they get very, very upset. They don't like when they feel like the magic man or magic woman is fooling them with their stuff. Because normally they think we're awesome, but they don't get scared of our abilities if they don't feel that we would mind job them. If they start getting a whiff that we're mind jobbing them, and fibbing would count as that, then they get very, very appropriately so, they get freaked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it works kind of
they want to be
both ways,
part of
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. Just know, Glenn, you had about 2 seconds to say before I did. That definitely goes both ways. Because Najee, we love how enticing and appealing and awesome the Nijai is. But if we feel like we're being like tricked and we're just like being dangled out there as they gather a multitude of Najee that are just falling over them, oh my goodness, you'll see a dragon get upset.
And the thing is, they have Jai. So if they're like lying to us, or if they're not being as truthful, as honest as they're kind of playing it up to be, we can see their like mouth wiggle a little bit, or we can see the way that they did this or that, and we can notice that something's off.
Yeah, both Nijez are designed to read the other Nijez, for sure.
Cool. Yeah.
That makes it so great. It's true.
Man, there's so many things that you guys are talking about, and I had so many different thoughts come up to me, but now I lost them all. Now I'm like, oh, what was I going to say? I was like, oh, no. Oh.
Yeah, no, I have a notepad handy because this is happening to me like throughout this entire thing. I'm just thinking of something. I'm like, if I don't write this down right this second, I'm going to forget it in about 11 or 12 seconds. It'll be gone.
Well, you guys have any quick before we sign off? Because I got to get over with Shailene. We have some other missions to do. So, is there anything before we go?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. This is a great time, great session. It was good having you, Neo Magus. I thought the exchange went really, really well.
Yeah.
If you guys had any more follow-up ideas, go ahead and feel free to post them in the thread where this comes up. And so this should go right to Naiji Temple, correct?
Yeah.
All right, great
Or
discussion.
Nijez Temple, too.
What's that?
Well, I was just thinking maybe we could start in the Nijez Temple, too. That would be cool.
I think we should, but I think what we should do is we should actually make the ebooks first.
All right, okay.
And then, but just the ebooks are specifically designed to take you to linking with your other. So I think having the 2 ebooks, it'll be actually the exact right time to start doing linking rituals.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Have a great night, everyone, and we'll do this again next time. Sound good? 5:30.
That sounds good.
Okay. Have a good night.
Awesome.
Have a great night, everyone.
Yeah. Good night. You guys too, man. Awesome, Neo Magus, to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, for the invite.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, see you around.
See ya.